A deep reflection on the history and role of the Nethinim in Israel and the Temple. Throughout the history of ancient Israel, the Bible records many groups of people who contributed to the life of the nation and the worship of God. Most readers are familiar with the priests, the Levites, the kings, the prophets, and the 12 tribes of Israel. However, there is also a lesser-known group called the Nethinim, whose quiet yet faithful service supported the daily functioning of the temple. Although they rarely received much attention, the story of the Nethinim reveals profound spiritual lessons about humility, dedication, and the place of service in the worship of God. Their story reminds us that the life of faith is sustained not only by prominent leaders, but also by people who faithfully perform unseen tasks. The word Nethinim comes from a Hebrew root meaning to give or to dedicate. The name therefore means the given ones, or those who have been dedicated. This title reflects their role in Israel as religious life. They were people given over for service in the temple. Unlike the priests who descended from Aaron or the Levites who came from the tribe of Levi, the Nethinim were not part of the priestly lineage. Instead, they were assigned to assist the Levites in practical duties that helped maintain the operations of the temple. In a sense, the Nethinim functioned as temple servants, supporting the sacred work carried out by the priests and Levites. Their responsibilities may not have been ceremonial or prestigious, but they were essential for maintaining the worship system that Israel practiced. One of the most important facts about the Nethinim is that they were not members of the 12 tribes of Israel. The tribes of Israel were descended from the sons of Jacob, also known as Israel. These tribes formed the covenant community and inherited specific territories in the Promised Land. Membership in these tribes was determined by genealogy and ancestry. The Nethinim, however, were different. They were not Israelites by tribal lineage. Many of them likely came from foreign or non-Israelite backgrounds, but were integrated into the religious life of Israel through their service to the temple. Their identity was therefore not based on bloodline but on dedication to the work of God's house. This detail is significant because it shows that even those who were originally outside Israel's tribal system could find a place within the community through service and commitment. The Bible does not provide a single explicit origin story for the Nethinim, but many scholars connect them to an important event recorded in Joshua chapter 9. In this chapter, a group known as the Gibeonites feared the advancing Israelites. Instead of fighting, they used deception. They pretended to be travelers from a distant land and asked Israel to make a treaty with them. Because the Israelites did not consult the Lord before making the agreement, they unknowingly made a covenant with people who actually lived nearby. When the deception was discovered, Israel could not break the oath they had sworn. As a result, the Gibeonites were assigned a permanent role. They would become woodcutters and water carriers for the house of God. This meant that their descendants would serve in practical labor connected with worship. Many scholars believe that over time these temple servants became known as the Nethinim. If this connection is correct, the Nethinim began as a group of foreigners who were integrated into Israel's worship system through service rather than through ancestry. Although the Bible does not list every duty of the Nethinim, we can reasonably understand their work by examining the needs of the temple and the hints given in the biblical texts. Their responsibilities likely included tasks such as carrying water used for ritual purification, cutting and preparing wood for the altar sacrifices, assisting the Levites with logistical needs, maintaining the temple grounds and facilities, preparing materials required for worship activities, performing manual labor connected with temple service. These duties may seem ordinary or even menial, but they were absolutely necessary. The sacrificial system required constant preparation. Fires had to be maintained, water was needed for cleansing rituals, and the temple environment had to be organized and maintained. Without people performing these practical tasks, the priests would not have been able to focus on their sacred responsibilities. Thus, the Nethinim served as the practical foundation of temple operations. The Nethinim become especially visible in the period following the Babylonian exile. When the people of Judah were taken into captivity in Babylon, the temple in Jerusalem was destroyed and the normal system of worship was interrupted. Decades later, under Persian rule, the Israelites were allowed to return to their homeland and rebuild their society. The book of Ezra records detailed lists of the people who returned to Jerusalem. These lists include priests, Levites, ordinary Israelites, and also the Nethinim. This inclusion is important. It shows that even though they were not part of the 12 tribes, the Nethinim were still considered an integral part of the restored religious community. The first return was led by Zerubbabel, who helped oversee the rebuilding of the temple. Later, Ezra returned with another group to strengthen the spiritual life of the community. In both cases, the Nethinim are mentioned among those who returned to Jerusalem. The book of Nehemiah also refers to the Nethinim and indicates that they lived in a specific district near the temple. This suggests that they continued performing their supporting roles in the daily life of worship. One remarkable detail in the biblical record is that the names and families of the Nethinim were carefully documented. Even though they were not priests or tribal leaders, their presence in the official genealogical lists shows that their service was recognized and valued. This detail reveals something important about the biblical worldview. Every person who contributes to the worship of God matters. The work of the temple required many people in many roles, and the Nethinim were part of that sacred system. The story of the Nethinim offers several powerful spiritual insights. First, their role highlights the importance of humble service. In every generation, there are people who quietly support the work of God without public recognition. Their contributions may not be visible, but they are essential. Although the Nethinim were not members of the 12 tribes, they were still given a place in the life of the temple. Their dedication allowed them to participate in the worship of the true God. Third, the Nethinim demonstrate that faithfulness in small responsibilities is meaningful. The tasks they performed, carrying water, cutting wood, maintaining the temple, might seem simple, but they enabled the entire worship system to function. Great spiritual movements often depend on people who are willing to serve in practical ways. The example of the Nethinim still speaks to modern communities of faith. In many churches and ministries today, there are individuals who serve quietly behind the scenes. They prepare the space for worship, manage logistics, maintain buildings, organize resources, and support the work of ministry. These roles may not receive public attention, but they are essential for the life of the community. The Nethinim remind us that service itself is an act of worship. Faithfulness, humility, and dedication are qualities that God values deeply. The Nethinim may be one of the least known groups in the Bible, yet their story carries a timeless message. They were not priests, Levites, prophets, or members of the 12 tribes of Israel. Many of them likely came from foreign origins. Yet through dedication and service, they found a place in the house of God. Their lives remind us that the kingdom of God is built not only by visible leaders, but also by those who faithfully perform the work that others may never notice. Every act of service, no matter how small, can become part of God's greater purpose. May we learn from the Nethinim to serve faithfully, humbly, and wholeheartedly, remembering that in the eyes of God no service offered to Him is ever insignificant.